This is the Washington Times front page for Monday, May 3rd, 2021. Thanks for starting your week with us. I'm George Gerbo. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said his department has cut the number of children in Border Patrol custody by nearly 90%. Stephen Dinan reports at the peak of the surge in March, 5,700 unaccompanied juveniles were mired in Border Patrol stations and had been there an average of 133 hours, nearly twice the legal limit. Now, Mayorkas says just 677 children are in Border Patrol stations and have been there only an average of 20 hours. The children are still mostly in government custody in shelters run by the Department of Health and Human Services. But even there, the government said it's cutting the time it takes to get the children to relatives living in the United States. Immigrant rights activists still say that more needs to be done, including the legalization of the approximately 11 million illegal immigrants in the United States. The filibuster is becoming a litmus test in the early stages of the 2022 election cycle and could prove to be a dividing line in the battle for control of the Senate. Seth McLaughlin reports despite the filibuster's unpopularity among liberals, Democrats have not changed the decades-old rule in part because of opposition from the likes of Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona. A Monmouth University national poll released last week said 38% of adults want to keep the filibuster in its current form, 38% support changing the way it's used, and 19% support scrapping it entirely. Among Democrats, 49% support changes to the rule, 30% support getting rid of the filibuster, and 14% want to keep the rule in place. Among Republicans, 64% support keeping it in place, 22% support some changes, and just 10% support abolishment. Experts say President Biden's goal of cutting greenhouse gases by more than 50% by 2030 isn't feasible without a rapid transformation of the U.S. economy that would hit electricity, transportation, and manufacturing particularly hard. Harris Alec reports researchers at the University of Maryland estimate that the electricity sector would have to slash emissions 76% by 2030, and the transportation sector would have to reduce emissions by 40%. Making changes to those two economic sectors is essential to combating climate change, as they produce more than half of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. Transportation accounts for nearly 29%, and electricity generation makes up 25% of emissions, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. A reminder that you can find all these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. Don't have access to the Times yet? It'll cost you less than a latte a month. Visit WashingtonTimes.com/George and get 25% off your annual subscription. David Cherfinsky looks at President Biden's efforts to empower labor unions across the whole of government. The president has established a cabinet-level task force to plan a federal strategy to empower unions and pushed out the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board and ousted his replacement soon after. Biden also tacitly endorsed an unsuccessful attempt by Amazon workers in Mississippi to unionize and included union-friendly language throughout major economic proposals. Additionally, he issued an executive order making it the policy of the federal government to support and promote unionization. James Varney looks at efforts in states to change their curriculums to restrict the teaching of critical race theory. Bills to that end in mostly Republican-run legislatures have failed to garner widespread support. The legislation died in Mississippi, South Dakota, Arizona, and in the Democratic majority legislature in Rhode Island. In Arkansas, 3 bills to block racism-centric teaching have died so far, but a 4th has been introduced. Legislation also is still alive on the matter in New Hampshire, Texas, Iowa, Missouri, and West Virginia. And finally, in Kenya, the government wants to shut down 2 massive United Nations-run refugee camps that together host nearly 440,000 people. Kenyan officials say they have intelligence reports showing the 2 camps have become havens for terrorists and smugglers. A meeting of Kenyan officials and UN representatives produced a statement late last week saying the closure was postponed for 2 weeks to allow time to create a plan for the humane management of refugees in both camps. 63% of the refugees are from Somalia, with the rest from other nearby African countries. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and subscribe for free to the front page. Just search Washington Times on your favorite podcast platforms. You can also listen to the front page on Amazon Alexa connected devices. Just say, Alexa, play the front page podcast. And a reminder to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.